What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of ShiShi Meditations 2020 edition. And I'm sitting here right now in this beautiful home in Costa Rica. It's just gorgeous here. I'm here with my buddy Donner, also known as John Don Music. And today is the first video in a 4-part video series about my recent experience at a place called Rythmia Life Advancement Center in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. And Rythmia is basically a place where you go there for either a week or 2 weeks to participate in plant medicine ceremonies with a plant medicine called Ayahuasca. And Ayahuasca is a native plant that comes from the Amazon jungle and has been used by indigenous Amazonian tribes in Colombia and Brazil and Peru for close to 5,000 or 6,000 years. It's an entheogen, so it's a hallucinogenic. It's actually a combination of 2 plants that creates a hallucinogenic effect and actually releases DMT in your brain. And DMT is a molecule that actually already exists endogenously in our brains, and it is released only a handful of times in our life. So it's released when we're born, when we're literally coming out of our mother's womb. It's released when we dream, and it's released when we die. So what ayahuasca does is essentially you take this drink, it's a brew, and it starts to create and release more DMT in your brain. And this can have the result of having mystical experiences, the feeling like you're dying, the feeling like you're being born. It's also a very purgative drink, so many people experience vomiting, nausea, illness, and also purging in not so violent ways. Like, for example, I'll get into this a little bit more when I start talking about my experience, but I just yawned a lot. I was just like, laughing, crying. And essentially, this is a substance that's been used for, centuries for spiritual growth, spiritual awakening, to get to know yourself better. And there are some incredible just stories about its healing powers, both on physical and mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, even things like cancer being reversed or going into remission after somebody participated in an ayahuasca ceremony. So I'm not going to get too into the details of ayahuasca. There's a lot of resources out there if you want to learn more about it. I would recommend you head on over to the Rythmia page, and they have tons and tons of videos about it. And I'll link to that in the description for all 4 of these videos. But essentially what I want to talk about in these 4 videos is my experience at Rythmia. And each video will talk about a different ceremony. So there's 4 ceremonies. And the way that it works is you show up on a Saturday or Sunday at Rythmia, and it's just this beautiful 5-star luxury resort in Costa Rica. It's, I think, the only medically licensed place on earth where you can take ayahuasca. So they have medical doctors, both Western trained and also shamans from the actual tradition of the plant medicine. They're on staff. They have EMTs. You definitely feel very safe. And I know that for me, going into my first time drinking this, that was a concern of mine. I wanted to feel like all my needs were taken care of, and I wanted to feel like I was safe and in an environment where I could really go deep with myself without, worrying about anything. Because ayahuasca is a very strong entheogen. I mean, I've done LSD, I've done shrooms, but had never done any of these more quote unquote sacred plant medicines, and ayahuasca really kicks it up to another level. So anyway, we get to Rythmia, and the first 2 nights you do breath work. So you do these really intense breathing classes that are amazing. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you do a ceremony each night. So you fast. So basically you stop eating after lunch to cleanse your system and get ready for the ayahuasca, which is really difficult at Rythmia because the food there is fucking incredible. It's so good. It's all farm to table, organic stuff, lots of vegan options, which is great for me. But yeah, so you fast, and then you do 4 ceremonies. Then Friday you do breath work, and then Saturday, Sunday you check out. So it's a week-long program. And yeah, honestly, I can say like having done a lot of meditation retreats and other sorts of ceremonies and things of that nature, Rythmia honestly is probably one of, if not the most life-changing experience that I've had so far. It's really, a lot of it has to do with the plant medicine, but just the whole energy of the place. Everybody there is so loving. The staff is so caring. And I was surprised at how many people I met. There are almost 100 people in my group, and we were the New Year's Eve group. So we started on the 28th and ended on the 3rd. So we were like tripping balls on ayahuasca on New Year's Eve, which was crazy, on New Decade's Eve, bringing in 2020. But I was really surprised pleasantly at how many people in my group, it was their first time doing ayahuasca. I mean, it was my first time doing it as well, but also how many people it was their first time doing any sort of hallucinogenic. And I was like, that's really brave that you're starting with ayahuasca, but I think it's just a testament to how safe and comfortable Rythmia makes you feel as a place to try this medicine. You know, there are some people that consider the more authentic way to go down to the jungle, the Amazon jungle in Peru or Brazil or Colombia and do it there. And that's a path that I might consider at some point, but I knew for my first time I really wanted to do it in this environment. So now I want to get into the ceremonies. So on the first night, we line up at the Maloca, which is the space where everybody is going in to drink the medicine. And obviously everybody's just like nervous as shit. Most people had never done it. There are a few people that had done it before. Good job. But for the most part, like most of us had never done it. And we lined up at the Maloca, and also everybody's really hungry because you're fasting. So people are just like, you know, there's a tangible nervousness in the air. But we line up for the Maloca and we sit down, and the shaman does their traditional ceremony, which involves rapé, which is like a tobacco snuff that they shoot up your nose before you do the ceremony, which really helps to clear your head, clears your third eye out. For me, I have like really strong sinus issues, and it really helped clear up my sinus and made me feel really like just like alert and present. And yeah, they play, the music during the ceremonies is incredible. They play just absolutely beautiful traditional music. They play icaros, which are like the traditional Amazonian tribal music that the ayahuasqueros and shamans play. And then before I knew it, it was time to drink. So the shaman called everybody up for the first cup. And so I go up in line, I take the first cup. It's like a shot glass basically of this like sludgy tasting stuff. And when I was doing my research before this, everybody like all the videos and stuff that I was reading, it was pretty unanimously, everybody said it tasted really gross. But I actually kind of enjoyed the taste. It almost had like a chocolatey, like nutty quality to it. Maybe I just am so obsessed with chocolate that I like superimpose the taste of chocolate on the ayahuasca. But I don't know. I really enjoyed it. On the first and third night, it's a Brazilian brew called Santo Daime. And then the second night, it's a Costa Rican homegrown brew. And then on the fourth night is the one that does not taste that good, in my opinion. And it's a brew called Yahe, which is from Colombia. But we'll get to the other ceremonies in a second. So for the first ceremony, I took the first cup and went back to my mattress and laid down. And basically, for the first like 45 minutes to an hour, it felt like I didn't really feel anything. I kind of was just like, I'm not really feeling much. And then before I knew it, about an hour and a half in, they called for the second cup. And within this time period, people had already started purging. So I was like, I could hear people puking. I could hear some people crying. Some people were running to the bathroom. Some people were laughing. So there's just the full range of human emotions going on. But I personally was just not really feeling anything. So I get up for the second cup, and the shaman asks me, "Are you feeling the medicine?" And I don't know if it was just placebo or what, but I felt like when I got up, I kind of was feeling like a little funny. So I told him like, yeah, maybe a little, but like not really. And so he poured me another cup, and this one was a lot bigger than the first cup, and it tasted slightly different. And since my experience, I suspect that they have like slightly different potency brews that they give to people depending on how much they're feeling the medicine. So I take the second cup, and I walk outside of the Maloca, and I'm staring up at the stars. And I mean, Costa Rica is just, It's so gorgeous. I've never seen so many stars in my life. I'm just looking up at the sky and it's so beautiful. And then they start playing music and I start to feel like kind of a little funny. And so I lie down, and within like a few minutes of laying down, I just start to have this incredibly intense embodied experience where I can just feel like all the cells and organs of my body just working. And the closest thing I can relate it to is it was like a very intense shrooms experience. So for me, like, I'm not necessarily the most visual person on psychedelics. Usually when I do shrooms or LSD, like, I don't really have too many visuals. I tend to have a lot of more like emotional stuff come up. I have a lot of intellectual insights. And with shrooms specifically, it's a very like embodied experience. Like I really feel it in my body. And that's kind of how I felt with this first cup of ayahuasca. I was just lying there and I just felt very like just stuff moving around, and it would oscillate between getting like very uncomfortable to getting very like pleasant and nice. And, you know, the one thing that they keep telling you at Rythmia over and over again is just to surrender, 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 letting go, letting go, letting go. And if you can do that, you can really navigate the medicine better. And it's a microcosm for life, right? Like the medicine really is a microcosm for life in the sense that it's going to just throw you through every emotion, every sensation. And it's almost like a test of like, can you just stay anchored in yourself? Can you stay anchored in some level of, you know, love or gratitude or some sort of positive, I don't even want to say emotion because your emotions are all over the place, but some sort of level of just presence is the word through all of this stuff, and acceptance and non-judgment of it and not try to fight it. The moment you kind of start resisting the medicine because it's doing something that's uncomfortable for you is when you really start to suffer. It's kind of like that quote, what you resist persists. So it really is like a tremendous teacher and catalyst for just teaching you how to let go and surrender. So I was going through this experience, and I really credit, there were moments where it was uncomfortable, but overall I felt like I could kind of ride through it. And I really credit that to my meditation practice again, because meditation just teaches you to just sit with whatever is coming up, however discomforting or comfortable, however much you prefer or don't prefer it. And then what happened, and this is going to be a common theme for these next 4 videos. Some of the stuff I'm going to say might be hard to understand or describe to people who haven't experienced this for themselves. But the best way I can describe it is I essentially just started to experience my own death over and over again. I started to experience like a shutting down, like my vision getting blurry and I couldn't move, and my hearing started getting like faded and the music started drifting to the background. And it was really, really psychologically intense because it genuinely felt like I was dying. And luckily with Rythmia, they really do a good job of preparing you for the medicine and telling you that, you know, ayahuasca is called the vine of death. A very common experience is to experience your own death. And really what it is a proxy for is it's actually an ego death that you're experiencing. The medicine is trying to teach you to not be attached to the person that you think you are. And for me, this is really powerful because I tend to kind of like walk around with this low grade level of fear and anxiety. And for a long time, I couldn't really figure out like, what is this? Why do I have this like constant, just like low grade, you know, it's nothing traumatic. It's nothing I can't handle, but it's like a low grade level of just like stress and fear and just like anxiety when there shouldn't be any anxiety, you know, like I'm healthy, I'm fine. Like there's nothing to be that worried about. And what I realized was this low grade level of fear and anxiety was really just a manifestation of a greater primordial fear of death. And so the medicine in her infinite divine intelligence knew this, recognized this in me, and knew that it had to take me through the experience of dying, had to show me my own death, to show me that it's an incredibly peaceful and sublime experience if you are able to surrender to it, like everything else in life. And B, it's, and yeah, I might lose some people here, but it's not the end. Because essentially what happened was I would experience my death. And I don't Actually, you know what? Fuck it. For the sake of like the honesty of this video, I am going to get into some like pretty dark details. But I basically experienced dying in like all these super violent ways. Like I got eaten by a snake. I got captured by a serial killer and like sliced up into little pieces and fucking killed that way. I died peacefully. Like there's just all these different scenarios happening. And the best way I can describe this is kind of like a lucid dream. So it's not like when I'm getting sliced up, I can like feel the fucking knives like on my body. Like there's no physical pain, but the emotional and mental pain of it was as real as if it was happening. It was like just being in a nightmare, basically. And I kept dying and dying. And then every time I would die, there would be this moment where I would just know, I don't know how to explain this, but I would just know that I was dead. And then I would just kind of like be lying there and I would realize like, okay, I'm dead, but I can still hear the music playing, which was really cool because I kind of had this insight like music lasts beyond death, which I just love because like music's my favorite thing in the world. But I had this insight where I was like, I guess I'm dead now, but I'm still here, but there's nothing for my awareness, for my consciousness to identify with. There's no ashish here anymore for my conscious to hook onto and say, that's mine. There's no body here for my consciousness to hook onto and say, oh, this is the body I need to protect and I need to be afraid of anything happening to it. There's no opinions to defend. There's no ego to like grasp onto and say, this is my ego that I need to protect and always be the man or whatever. It was just pure awareness, pure consciousness. I mean, the only thing I can really compare this to is like occasionally in my life, I've had deep states of meditation where I've had this like samadhi bliss experience of just complete disidentification from the self, from this physical plane. And the best way I can describe it is the most sublime, peaceful experience I can ever describe. I mean, it literally felt like heaven. It's the complete absence of identification with any one emotion, physical sensation, or thought process. It's just emptiness. And I kind of had this deep realization that when we die, that's where we're going to. And in this way, I want to pull up the Ram Dass quote. He said once that, or rest in peace, Ram Dass, he said once that dying is absolutely safe. It's like taking off a tight shoe. And I feel like I really experienced that for myself. And it was just an incredibly profound, powerful experience. And the takeaway, the lesson that I took from that first night is, it's not that I like want to die or anything. Like I still want to live. I mean, if anything, it gave me more of an appreciation for this beautiful life and this beautiful physical plane that we've come to. But I have a much deeper sense and knowing now that I am an infinite soul. I'm an infinite fractal of consciousness that has decided to come down to this physical plane and taken on this body and taken on this identity of Ashish. And really my only job while I'm here on this earth is to grow and to be of service to others so that they can also grow towards peace, towards this ultimate peace that we're all going to anyway. Another Ram Dass quote, he said once, we're all walking each other home. And it doesn't mean that you need to become disengaged with life or nihilistic or suicidal because what's the point if we're all going to this place anyway? Actually, to the contrary, it means that now that we know that this 3D world that we take so seriously, that causes all these stresses, where we see all this evil in the world that we want to fix, it's a game. It's just a game. It's a holographic figment of the imagination of our consciousness. Just like our identity, just like our ego, just like everybody we see, everything we see. And because it's a game, we can start to treat it like a game. We can start to treat it with more playfulness, with more joy, with more engagement. We don't need to take ourselves and this reality so seriously. We don't need to be so caught up in what other people think about us or trying to prove ourselves or trying to be righteous or whatever it might be. All we need to do is realize that it's a game that we have willingly chosen at the soul level to come down to this earth to play, and then play the video game with as much integrity and love as we can in service of others and ourselves. Because ultimately, what I got from this is that my life purpose is to be at peace and to be of service so that I can help other people be at peace as well. And the last thing I'll say about this first ceremony is another thing that I experienced that was very psychologically difficult was I experienced a lot of darkness in myself that I didn't know was there. A lot of rage. And at one point, and I'm just going to share this for the sake of being vulnerable and for the sake of being as truthful as I can. At one point, I felt myself to be some really evil people in history. I felt, what would it be like? What was it like to be somebody like Genghis Khan? Or what is it like to be somebody like a murderous psychopath? These people exist, right? And we hear these like horrific things on the news about ISIS, or we think about, the most evil people in history like Hitler or all this stuff. And I think there's a part of most of us being just good, moral people. There's a part of us that when we see that, we want to distance ourselves from that. And we want to believe that is a special breed of evil that just doesn't exist inside of us, and that we're so good and that couldn't be what we are. But what I realized was that actually that darkness lives inside all of us. And it's our responsibility to learn how to harness and alchemize the raw power of that rage and darkness and use it as a force for good. And in this way, I really feel like I came to terms with and made peace with a lot of my shadows, and realized that a lot of my nice guy tendencies of always trying to be agreeable and accepted by people were really just a repression of this darkness. I didn't want people to see that I had this darkness inside me. But now that I know that it's there, and it's not something to be afraid of, but it's something to be harnessed for good, I feel like I'm no longer as concerned with what people think. I'm just much more concerned with my own mission and my own path about how do I alchemize all of this raw power, God power energy inside me. In Hinduism, they talk about Shiva, the destroyer. How do you harness this raw, masculine, destructive energy and use it as a force for good so that you can interplay with the feminine, which is the world, the divine feminine, in a way that brings more peace and love and light to the world? So that's my first ceremony, and my battery's about to run out, but I will be back shortly to talk about night number 2. Much love.